Here's Darryl Bishop to tell us the latest on an exciting merger of two very well-established and professional community mental health organisations. Well, Darryl, last time you were on Take It From Us, you were the national manager of Like Minds. That's going back a few years.
Oh, kia ora, Sheldon. It's been about 4 years. It's long, about 8 years ago since I've been on the show. So it's great to be back.
Well, what's the background to this merger?
Well, although we're talking about it publicly over the last couple of months, we've been talking about it as organisations since last July. So, as many people may know, Framework have been without a CEO for a while, and the background was that myself and Spencer Beasley, who's the CFO of Framework, had a conversation after a hui one day, and I was just offering support and saying, we're always looking for partnerships and conversations about how we can work together. And given the lack of a CEO, offered that first branch of conversation, and that's how it started really. And it's kind of developed from a conversation in a car park in South Auckland to this wonderful thing that we're doing now. If you look at the history of our sector and you look at the history of Framework and Connect, both came out of the deinstitutionalisation process, and both were community responses to people living with lack of adequate support. And both organisations have done amazing work for 30 plus years, supporting people to find housing, find jobs, build relationships, keep well, and are both really recovery focused. So the idea of us coming together is built on a shared value base and a shared experience of the last 30 years.
Yeah.
So it was an easy start to a conversation.
You've had a change of name. I'm just trying to think. Was it AHMS, AHMS?
Yeah, it was. Before my time, it was Auckland Mental Health Service, yeah. So it was an organisation very similar to Framework, based around helping people find somewhere to live and the right supports in the community. Probably the biggest change in that time is Connect is a real leader in peer support. So in more recent times, a big part of our development has been the development of lived experience as a leadership within the organisation, and over half of our staff have a lived experience, and we provide opportunities within peer support and other roles for people to use that lived experience in a positive way. And that's put us in a position of some growth from a business point of view, but also changed the organisation, because once you see lived experience as a beating heart of an organisation, it does change it quite significantly. And we've been very blessed by that.
A lovely way to put it, the beating heart of an organisation. Peer support is probably the area of most dramatic growth in mental health, isn't it?
In some ways, yeah. In some ways, also, it's stalled, if I was being critical. If you look nationally, we're about the same amount of FTEs of peer support nationally as we were 5 years ago. There's not been that much change. The change that the increase that have been, Connect have been partly responsible for that with the development of some services, thinking of services like Piripono up in Whangaparoa, or Peer Talk, which is a phone line service, and Reach Out.
What is the strength of lived experience, Darryl?
Oh, that's a very tough question, Sheldon. You don't. Hey, look.
It wasn't on the agenda, was it?
No. I think if I want to take a very broad sort of philosophical view, we all should be reflecting on our journey through life in any conversation we have. So I think that lived experience of trauma or lived experience of mental distress just informs the conversation with somebody else going through the same or similar situation. So I think that in essence that captures it. However, what we've seen is the value of the intentional use of that lived experience in a therapeutic way. So we don't just employ people with lived experience. We train them in a model which allows them to carefully, in a considered way and supported with supervision and a model, to use that lived experience therapeutically. So we're not just about employing people with lived experience. This is about a careful use of that lived experience. That we needed all of the services we currently have. So in terms of a merger, there was nothing to get rid of. There was no replication. Where Framework was strong in an area, Connect wasn't as present geographically. And where we were both in the same geographical area, it was doing different services. So
there was a dovetail.
Yeah, it became really obvious that perhaps it was easier than these things normally are. But much of the last 6 months has been about detail and trying to work out how we're going to put this together.
Right. But the dovetail, the complementary services that you identified fairly early on, they've been reinforced in these discussions and examinations?
Yeah, I think there was a light bulb moment where we realised that many of us dream of having an organisation that can wrap many, many parts and many services around people. And coming together, we had lots of complementary parts that would add to the whole, so that this really was a 2 + 2 = 5. Not 2 + 2 = 4. We're not trying to save money. We're not trying to rationalise back office. We're actually thinking that bringing complementary but different services together and different organisations together, we can do something really special.
You're with Take It From Us on 104.6 Planet FM.
So today we're talking to the group CEO, Darryl Bishop, of the merged organisations, Connect and Framework, and Darryl was just about to give us some insights into some significant developments that are being progressively announced. What are some of those things that you'd like to talk about, Darryl?
Well, Sheldon, once we decided we were going to do this, we always knew at some point we would need a name for the new organisation. Otherwise, people like you have to keep saying the merged organisation between Framework and Connect, and it's quite a lot to get out. So we committed to a process of co-design to do that, and we spoke to staff and service users and a range of people. That process took a couple of months, but as some of your listeners may have already seen my shining face on a video release we did through social media, but we landed with the name Ember. Ember, which we see as a metaphor for recovery, because many of the people we work with, their fires might be quite low, might be an ember, like an ember in a fire, but we feel as an organisation we can give birth back to that and make people's fire strong again. So we thought Ember was a very good metaphor, and we'll also be using a Tereo. We're committed to the use of Tereo in the name as part of our commitments to the treaty, and the Tereo strapline we're looking at is we're going to use, we've decided on, is Korowai Takatini, which means a cloak of many parts, which we feel it was given to us by a Kaumatua, one of the Kaumatua who works with Connect, and he described it as meaning a cloak of many parts, which reflects what our services do, because we provide lots of wraparound support and nourishment and nurturing. So that cloak metaphor was really strong, but also it represents the merger, because we're bringing together many parts into one whole. So Ember, Korowai Takatini, is the name of the trust, and it will be a group structure, so there'll be services in different parts of the group sitting underneath that.
So there'll be Ember Trust?
Yeah, the overall trust will be called Ember Trust. We will be having Ember services, so they'll just be called Ember, but they will be all the services funded by DHBs and ministries. We're also going to establish, really excitingly, Ember Innovations, which will be an area where we do a number of things. Both organisations have ventured into social enterprise in recent years, so that's where that will sit. But also it will be a place where we can incubate new ideas away from the glare of public funding, and we can develop funky, innovative, new ways of doing things ourselves. Mm-hmm. And then we're also going to set up Ember Housing, which is a housing trust to support people into real accommodation and to occasionally act as landlord and things like that.
Right. So, I mean, Connect still has some intensive rehabilitation, housing rehabilitation, something that Framework has sort of moved away and put its clients back into the community, but it also leases houses, particularly in South Auckland, where it can house some of its clients as well.
So the residential support services will sit in the Services Limited. So all of the services we're currently funded to deliver will continue, and they will be run as a services organisation called Ember. The Ember Housing is more like you described, when we act as where we're supporting people into their accommodation into the community, or we're acting as landlord, or we're supporting people with landlords in the community. but the actual residential services that Connect have will sit in Ember services, in the services area.
The response, the feedback to the announcement, you did as you say, you did a YouTube clip which has gone out, I understand, to many in the mental health community or sector. Your feedback?
Well, viral, I think, is the word, Spencer, that they use these days, isn't it? I think a couple of thousand people have watched it, but 1,500 of those might have just been my mum showing it to people, so we won't get too carried away. The response has been really good. I think when we did the co-design, people gave us some clear feedback. They wanted it to be simple. They wanted it to have Te Reo in it, but not to be just a sole Te Reo name. They wanted it to have a recovery focus. So we've incorporated all of those things. I think it's a name which suits the organisation, and people seem to have responded well to it. However, a brand, as you know with your background, Sheldon, a brand is only as good as you. So if the services we provide aren't up to scratch, then that brand will quite quickly not be a very good brand. But I'm confident that our staff, our people, our services are fantastic. So whatever we called it in time, that would be a positive brand, because our brand is our people, really.
Right.
This is just a name, but it's a name that we like, and it's a name that really, really captures the moment.
Yeah, and igniting people's recovery is a nice analogy, isn't it?
Yeah, anything with fire, for me. I've said to many people, if I've described my career and the things I've been very lucky to be involved with, whether it be Light Minds or Connect, it's about lighting fires, not putting them out.
Right.
So all the stuff I've wanted to do and the organisations that I've been blessed to be part of have been about starting fires, starting conversations, making things burn brightly, not about extinguishing fires and putting them out, not quieting people. So it suits me, it suits the organisations both.
Right.
And it's an exciting, bright future. Well, we start by stop calling them connectors and frameworkers.
Right.
That'll be the first step. So we first of all start by more using the one word and saying we all work for Ember, so everybody will be part of one organisation, and that'll happen in stages. There'll be a launch, and then July the 1st, but it will happen organically over time. I think we use every opportunity we can to bring people together, and you mentioned the dreaming sessions, and that was partly about developing a strategic direction for the new organisation, but also in a big part about bringing people together, because one thing I know about staff and people involved with both organisations is they're remarkably similar. They're all very passionate grassroots community workers and residential workers who believe really passionately, either because of lived experience or other experience, about the work we do. So as soon as we put them in a room together, all of those fears drop away. Yeah. And yes, there are some practical considerations about how we configure support services to make sure that we service all those areas from Kaitaia right down to Whakatane, but on the whole, it's just about bringing people together, Sheldon. Right. That's what we need to do.
Well, as I said at the Dream session on Friday, I was impressed by the numbers of mainlanders, of people from the South Island who seem to be part of both teams, and I'm sure that will give great strength to the organisation.
Well, you're biased. I was impressed by how many English people there were there as well. But no, I think these are two organisations with incredible diversity, incredible range of experience, and incredible skill.
You're with Take It From Us on 104.6 Planet FM.
And we have the privilege today on Mental Health Radio, Take It From Us, to be interviewing the Group Chief Executive of Ember, which is the new brand and name for the merged Connect and Framework. That merger will become official on the 1st of July, but it sounds as though there's going to be a big bash sometime beforehand. You're a bit of a party man, Darryl.
Well, that's a bit harsh. I just gave you a really simple name of Ember, then you still added the framework and connect bit at the end. I just think it's really important to acknowledge process and acknowledge change. And I think we can call it a party, but a launch event is something which will acknowledge all of the work, not just in the merger, but also it's really important to remember, while this is an exciting step forward into the future, it's also the end, effectively, of two organisations that have done 60 years' work between them. And it's important to acknowledge the journey that both organisations have been on to this point, because we're not going to use the name Framework or Connect anymore. It's going to be about Ember, which I think is fabulous and positive. But also it's important that, let's not mess around. Both Connect and Framework have saved lives. And that's been really important to lots of people. So we need to honour that, and that will be a big part of that event too.
So I guess something that's quite critical is, when do we start using the name Ember? Particularly for a broadcaster like Take It From Us, because we are funded by Framework Trust, which perpetuates the name of Framework, doesn't it? So is there going to be a sort of a cut-off date?
Obviously from July the 1st, you will be using Ember as part of this broadcast, but we may give you permission to use it before. Because look, it is an organic merge. It's all legally signed up, but we're choosing July the 1st for a number of reasons. One of the main ones being it's the first day of the financial year. So it's been really positive. Look, I would expect nothing else. Our reputations of both organisations are really strong with funders. So again, nobody's rescuing anybody. Nobody's failing. Both organisations would have carried on positively, but they can see the benefit of shared back offices, shared resources, a stronger, more stable, sustainable financial platform for a new organisation. All of those things are right up the funders' streets. So that's our direct funders. And then also at a central government level, and I know you want to talk about the inquiry, this comes at a time when the country needs strong voices around mental health, addiction, disability, those sorts of issues. So national stakeholders I've spoken to can see the benefit of combining skill, knowledge and resource.
So really the government's inquiry into mental health and addictions coincides with this merger. It's sort of like a springboard almost, isn't it? Is that the way you see it?
Well, nothing's by accident, Sheldon. One of the conversations early was there's an opportunity here for us to be a big player in influencing the future of the mental health and addiction sector, and we're better off in that conversation together rather than separately. I think I've worked in mental health my whole life since I trained. Well, since I did a psychology degree and then trained as a psych nurse. I see this as our opportunity, our generation's opportunity to make things better for future generations. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and we, as organisations, are not going to miss out on that. So we're going to be front and centre in all discussions, national, regional, because that's what we need to do. And we would have done that as separate organisations, but remembering the cry of 2 + 2 = 5, we're better off together because we'll have a stronger voice.